Wendy is a really good character. She's easy to pick up for beginners and continues to be a solid pick regardless of how much better the player gets at the game. People who are new to DST probably won't have to bother using any of Wendy's potions since Abigail's base damage, 600 HP, and 1 HP per second regeneration will suffice for most of the situations they find themselves in. However, as a player starts doing things like exploring the ruins and fighting bosses, they'll start to see situations where Abigail needs all the help she can get. That's where Wendy's ghostly elixirs come in. In this video, I'm going to go through each of the potions and give my opinion about how good they are and what kind of situations they should be used in. Even though tier lists have been done to death, I still think that they are a great way to compare how good each potion is. So after giving my review of each potion, I will be ranking them in a tier list. However, it should be noted that there is no S tier potion. To be an S tier potion, you basically would have to be the best potion in every situation, and in my opinion, no potion fulfills this requirement. So there will be tiers A, B, C, D, and F. The first potion I want to talk about is Revenant Restorative. This potion costs 1 Glan and 1 Morning Glory. When applied to Abigail, it boosts her healing from 1 HP per second to 3 HP per second for an entire game day. This potion is in my opinion the best overall potion because it's really cheap and useful in a wide range of situations. Each pipspook that you help out will give you a total of 6 to 7 Morning Glories, and as Wendy, getting Spider Glands is almost as easy as getting twigs and grass, so this potion is dirt cheap. However, the 3 HP per second is really useful. Abigail is great at taking out swarms, but if she's up against a mob that can't be stun locked, she still can get overwhelmed by their sheer numbers. Revenant Restorative greatly increases the amount of time she can stay in the fight, which means Abigail can crush hordes that are much larger than she normally can. In addition to this, the effect continues to work on Abigail even if you unsummon her. So not only does it allow her to deal with hordes that are much larger than normal, but even if she's up against something crazy, like a very long frog rain, you can just unsummon her when she gets low. While unsummoned, the potion still rapidly heals her. She should be at full HP after about 2 minutes, at which point you can resummon her and she'll most likely be able to deal with the rest. Revenant Restorative isn't just good against hordes, but also against stronger mobs and even bosses. If you're in the ruins, Abigail is going to be banged up by rooks, knights, and bishops. The boosted healing of Revenant Restorative is usually enough to keep her alive, since the time you spend outside of battle doing things like mining statues, exploring, crafting, and picking up loot allows her to get all her HP back. Revenant Restorative is even good against some bosses. Against Dragonfly, it allows Abigail to stay alive even if she gets hit a bunch of times. Against Kloss, it extends the amount of time Abigail can be kept in the fight, and lets Wendy resummon her later after her HP has refilled. Against Toadstool, you can let Abigail tank Boom Shrooms for a while, allowing you to not have to focus on kiting as much. It greatly increases Abigail's survivability against the Nightmare Werepig. It's so good that you can even beat Bee Queen with using a single Revenant Restorative during winter. Revenant Restorative is just really good, and is the overall best potion in my opinion, because it's cheap and effective. Because of this, it just barely makes it into the A tier. Although Revenant Restorative is the overall best, if we ignore cost, then the best potion by far is obviously Spectral Cure All. The potion is called Spectral Cure All, but I call it Spectre Cure All, because I think it sounds better and it's easier to say. It costs 1 Telltale Heart and 3 Morning Glory. It's the second most expensive potion, but it's just so good that in many situations it's worth the price. Like Revenant Restorative, Spectre Cure All increases Abigail's healing, except it goes from 1 HP to 20 HP per second. However, unlike all the other ghostly elixirs, the effect of Cure All only lasts for 30 seconds. While the healing is impressive, it by no means makes Abigail invincible. Basically every boss in the game greatly outdamages the healing. Even some of the stronger mobs like tall birds and rooks can outdamage it. It does, however, not only make Abigail invincible against hordes, but outheals horde damage so much that it'll usually bring her close to full HP. However, you really shouldn't be using this potion against hordes since it's so expensive, and Revenant Restorative can do that. Due to its price, this potion should be reserved for keeping Abigail alive only in situations where you absolutely need her. In my opinion, there are really only 3 situations for this. First is against Bee Queen, since you basically have to run away from the fight if Abigail dies. The second is against the Shadow Chess Pieces, if you're using a B-Flow, since you want to get through phase 2 as quickly as possible, because the level 2 Bishop's attacks are impossible to dodge on a B-Flow, and it's hard to heal your B-Flow in battle, so losing Abigail greatly increases the duration of this phase. Finally, you want to stockpile a bunch of these if you're going to fight Fuelweaver without Weather Pains, because Abigail will be constantly getting slammed for 150 plus damage by Fuelweaver's ground pound attack, and if Abigail dies, the fight becomes 100 times more difficult. Other than that, I wouldn't use this against any of the other bosses, because there are either cheaper ways to keep Abigail alive, or the cost of keeping Abigail alive is just too much. Because of its extreme costs, and the fact that in many situations, Revenant Restorative is more than enough, I place Spectral Cure All solidly in the B tier. Moving on from healing potions, the next is the damage potion Nightshade Nostrum. It costs 3 Morning Glory and 1 Stinger. When applied to Abigail, it makes her deal her maximum damage for an entire day. This potion does have its uses, but it's definitely not on the same level as the 2 healing ones. For starters, this potion is completely useless if you're in the caves, because Abigail is always dealing her nighttime damage anyway. On the surface, 40 damage per second is good damage for a mob, but instead of wasting 3 Morning Glories, you could just wait until dusk or nighttime. While attacking alongside Abigail, Wendy with the standard Handbat deals way more damage than Abigail. So if you're attacking something strong, a potion that keeps Abigail in the fight such as Revenant Restorative or Spectral Cure All is a much better option than one that boosts her attacks. Of course, if you're swimming in Morning Glories, then you can use Nightshade Nostrum, and once Abigail is low, you can use a Spectral Cure All on her. But in my experience, a single Revenant Restorative is usually more than sufficient for all those kinds of situations. The only exception to this rule would be bosses that have little chance of killing Abigail, such as Crab King and Dragonfly, or bosses that minion spam like Bee Queen. In those situations, I think Nightshade Nostrum definitely has its place. Crab King can't even hurt Abigail, so there's no reason not to use it. Dragonfly will pretty much never target Abigail as long as you keep her on passive and are constantly attacking it. Couple that with her 1 HP per second regeneration, and she can usually survive Dragonfly without a healing potion. Against Bee Queen, keeping Abigail alive is your number one priority. She can kill Grumblebees fast enough during dusk, but during day, she just takes way too long to do it, and will get shredded if you don't boost her attack with Nightshade Nostrum. Other than that, I really don't see a situation in which using 3 Morning Glories on a Nightshade Nostrum makes more sense than using Revenant Restorative, or waiting until dusk and nighttime. So I'd say Nightshade Nostrum has its uses, but it's not something I'd use very often. Because of this, I'd put it in C tier. The next potion also falls into the category of being useful in certain situations, and that is Vigor Mortis. Vigor Mortis requires 1 Morning Glory and 1 Honey. When applied to Abigail, it greatly increases her movement speed. The description of the potion doesn't say by how much, but in practice it will make her move 46% faster than the default player speed. This movement speed is equal to that of an ornery beefalo with a war saddle. Outside of one specific scenario, this potion is pretty much just there to help you fight bosses better. It's by far the best potion to use against Ancient Guardian, since it allows Abigail to easily get behind the pillars before getting hit by his charge attack. If you're fighting Dragonfly on a beefalo, you're fast enough that you can chase her down and deal extra damage to her when she spawns Lave. Vigor Mortis allows Abigail to keep up with you, which greatly buffs your attacks. This potion is practically required against phases 1 and 2 of Celestial Champion, as Abigail is simply too slow to dodge and kite otherwise. It's also really useful against Toadstool, since his attacks are very slow and predictable. In addition to fighting bosses, there is one situation where I think Vigor Mortis is a great choice, and that is during the Moonstorm events. When you're trying to help Wagstaff, you have to deal with waves of birds. They spawn in groups and in all directions, so a lot of times simply setting Abigail to aggressive isn't enough to keep them from damaging you or Wagstaff's experiment. With Vigor Mortis, Abigail has the speed to zoom around the area and take care of all the threats. Other than that, I don't really see any benefit from Vigor Mortis. Against normal bosses like Deerclops, Moose Goose, or Berger, kiting using Vigor Mortis is less viable than just attacking without Abigail. You can't really kite hordes, and don't really need to, since they all get drawn to Abigail anyway. Overall, I'd rank Vigor Mortis slightly above Nightshade Nostrum, because it has a little more situations where it's useful, and it's far cheaper. As far as the tier list goes, I can't put it in the same tier as Spectral Cure All, so it would go into C tier above Nightshade Nostrum. The last 2 potions are what I call shield potions. Whenever Abigail gets hit by an attack, her shield gets activated. While active, the shield blocks 100% of damage. Normally, the shield only remains active for half a second after Abigail gets hit. However, the last 2 potions changes this up a little bit. The first and cheaper one of the 2 is called Unyielding Draught. It costs 1 Morning Glory and 1 log to craft. When used on Abigail, it doubles the duration of her invincibility shield for an entire game day. For 8 minutes, whenever Abigail is hit by an attack, she'll be completely invulnerable for an entire second. It sounds pretty neat on paper, but to be honest, I never use this potion. It might help Abigail survive longer against regular mobs that can't be stun locked like Frog Rain, Spider Variants, or Spelunkies. But you know what else helps Abigail stay alive longer and lasts for a day? Revenant Restorative. I've tested this out many times, and I don't see any noticeable difference between Abigail's survivability against hordes when using Revenant Restorative versus Unyielding Draught. In theory, Unyielding Draught should let her survive longer, since an attack that deals 10 to 20 damage is way more than the 3 HP per second she'll be recovering using Revenant Restorative. However, in reality, it doesn't work out because there's almost never a situation where Abigail is taking so many attacks that her shield is triggered every second for an extended period of time. Like I said before, Revenant Restorative gives you the same results as Unyielding Draught against hordes, except unlike Unyielding Draught, Revenant Restorative lets Abigail quickly heal up the damage after the horde has been dealt with, or after you unsummon her. It's decent against hordes, but Revenant Restorative is simply better. Against bosses, it's useless because most bosses hit really hard and take over a second in between attacks. The only bosses that this might make a slight difference against would be Celestial Champion and Bee Queen, since Celestial Champion has a few rapid attacks, and Bee Queen's Grumblebees attack very quickly. The problem again is that there are simply better potions to use. Against Bee Queen, Revenant Restorative is simply better, and Nightshade Nostrum kills the Grumbles quickly, which prevents them from damaging Abigail. Against Celestial Champion, Vigor Mortis protects Abigail way better since it lets you completely avoid damage. Maybe I'm wrong for thinking this, but the only time I'd use Unyielding Draught is if I'm derping around using the Invincible Abigail tactic. If I'm trying to actually accomplish something, I'd never use it. Unyielding Draught is made irrelevant by Revenant Restorative, but I'd say it's still effective at extending Abigail's life against hordes. so it goes into the bottom of D tier instead of F. If you think I'm being too harsh with Unyielding Draught, I've got some good news for you. It's not the worst potion Wendy can craft. Unyielding Draught would have a place in gameplay if not for being completely overshadowed by Revenant Restorative. The last potion, however, is so bad that it belongs in the dumpster, because it's absolute garbage. I'm of course talking about Distilled Vengeance. For 3 Morning Glory and 1 Living Log, you can not only increase the duration of Abigail's shield to 1 second, but any mob that hits the shield during the second will take damage. How much damage will they take? 20. In other words, the most expensive potion allows Abigail to deal an additional 20 damage to a single target every time she is attacked by the target. Guess who can deal more than 20 damage to not only a single target, but all the targets in the surrounding area, and attacks way faster than every mob in the game? That's right, Abigail. What difference does 20 damage to a single target do when Abigail herself is already dealing more than 20 damage per second to everything in the area? Nothing, that's what. Against tons of weak mobs, Abigail is already killing these guys in seconds. Burning through a Living Log and 3 Morning Glories in order to kill weak mobs slightly faster is just a shameful waste of resources. Just use Revenant Restorative. Against bosses, an additional 20 damage for every hit that connects with the shield is an abysmal trade-off for such an expensive potion, since Abigail needs to get hit in order for the effect to trigger. You're much better off just keeping her alive with Spectral Cure All, Revenant Restorative, or Vigor Mortis, since the longer she remains in the fight, the more damage she can do directly and indirectly through boosting Wendy's attacks. A potion that requires Abigail to get hit in order to do a mere 20 damage to a single target is just absurd. Unsurprisingly, Distilled Vengeance goes straight to the bottom of F tier where it belongs. Now I think it would be wrong to just give criticism without suggesting a way to improve the potions. So here is my suggestion on how I would change Unyielding Draught and Distilled Vengeance to make them more viable. As explained, Unyielding Draughts problem is that it's simply overshadowed by Revenant Restorative. The boosted healing both inside and outside of battle is just a straight upgrade in 99% of situations. So what I would do is make Unyielding Draught a little more expensive by increasing the cost of the potion to 2 Morning Glories, a log and a gland. And I would make it both increase Abigail's shield duration and increase her regeneration to 3 HP per second for a day. By making it cost 2 Morning Glory and making it a direct upgrade to the Revenant Restorative, it no longer directly competes against Revenant Restorative, because in all situations it's a better potion. Instead, the question becomes whether the player thinks they can get away with just Revenant Restorative, or if the situation calls for more protection. To make Distilled Vengeance more viable, I will do 2 things. First, I will give it the 3 HP regeneration per second of Revenant Restorative. Second, instead of making it deal 20 damage to whatever attacked it, I would have it deal a single area of effect attack equal to all the damage that the shield absorbed while it was active. For example, if there are 10 frogs attacking Abigail's shield, and the shield absorbs 9 attacks, or 90 points of damage, after the shield deactivates, Abigail will deal an AoE attack that does 90 damage. I think if Distilled Vengeance did that, then it would actually be worth the Living Log and 3 Morning Glories that it cost to craft. If those changes were made to Unyielding Draught and Distilled Vengeance, I'd probably put them alongside Vigor Mortis and Nightshade Nostrum in the C tier. Anyway, that's pretty much my thoughts on the 6 different potions that Wendy has at her disposal. 2 of them are good, 2 of them are situational, 1 of them is simply outshined by Revenant Restorative, and the last is just pure garbage, which is why I don't use it and why I don't think anybody else does. This is just my opinion as a Wendy main, so if you disagree, feel free to let me know why in the comments. Like always, thanks for watching, take care, and have a great day.